Welcome back to Creating Genius. And today's episode is very special. I'm sure you can see it already because I'm having my first guest on. Abri Turner has been supporting this show from day one through encouragement and giving me feedback, and it's been fantastic. She's a brilliant musician who really knows how to be vulnerable, and her content on YouTube is one of the big reasons why I was even able to start doing video in the first place. Her alter ego and social media / music persona, Blue Like Fire, which I know we're going to talk about as we get into this episode, gives us a look into her psyche, some of the challenges that she's come head to head with, and the types of power that's given her. She really embodies creative expression to the fullest and is a huge source of inspiration for me. So thank you for being here and being the first guest. How does it feel being the first guest?
I am so psyched. I mean, like you said, I'm basically like a fangirl of this podcast, so I love it. And thank you for that intro. That was so nice.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, it's true. I remember I feel like we were having a conversation about potentially starting to do video, and you were like, look at all the stuff that I'm doing. For context, I guess I'll say this, like some of the makeup that you do and the hair and the wig and the presentation is very, what's the word? Like eccentric, maybe?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good word. Yeah, it's very eccentric. And
Yeah.
I remember watching it and I was like, oh my God, if she can do that, like I can just go and like videos myself talking.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good segue. So if you could explain a little bit what Blue Like Fire is and what that means to you and kind of how that like came about.
Yeah. So Blue Like Fire, the idea for that came about when my favorite color is blue, and typically when people think of blue, it's a cool color, and you think of like, the sky and water, and so there's all these labels associated with it. And I remember seeing a flame and like that really deep blue color that's actually my favorite color, and that's like the hottest part of the flame, like very much not a cool color. So to me, Blue Like Fire means to break free of the labels that are put on you by yourself or others, and just break free of those perceptions and free yourself.
I love that. I think it's so fitting that we're talking about this now, like right after the eclipse, and there's so much about new beginnings and fire, and I keep getting these visions of the phoenix being reborn out of whatever gets destroyed, and taking that like lens and looking at like the way you kind of came up with that. I think it's so fitting. It's almost weird that like now is the time that we're having this conversation. So when exactly did you make the connection to creating this persona and wanting to use it kind of as a vehicle for your music?
So I am a huge 21 Pilots fan, and the lead singer, he has like all these components that are like deeply meaningful to him, and one of those things is he like covers his neck and his hands in black paint, and some of the meanings associated with that are like more negatives, and I knew that I really liked that idea, but I wanted to bring more of a positive spin to it, and I also felt like I was not confident enough to put music out just as myself, so I really needed to create this alter ego in order to be able to do that. And so there's all these different components that have like a really deep meaning for me that are very positive.
Oh, that is so cool. I think it's similar in there's the like taking something that you've seen and kind of flipping it on its head, and you're like, I like this, but there's a way that I want to do it differently. And it's like, there's like the imitation is the best form of flattery, but when you imitate something and kind of make it better almost, I feel like it's, there's something special about that.
Yeah.
And you've actually turned me on to 21 Pilots, so thank you for that.
Yay!
They're so good. And for context, like Abri, I, and a few friends, we have this playlist where we all just put in music that we love, and that's kind of how, sort of by osmosis, I started picking up some more interest, and I was like, wow, these guys are really good. So is that would be like your main musical influence then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love those guys.
Awesome. Have you ever seen them?
I've gone to pretty much every one of their tours, like
Oh,
when
nice.
their album Blurry Face like had the big moment, like I was able to go to that and that completely changed the trajectory of my life. Like that's what got me into music. And yeah.
Awesome. That's so cool. And so seeing them changed the way you wanted to take your life and go more into music, and like what does music mean to you? Like what do you use it for? Why is it important to you?
Oh my gosh,
I know that's a big question. There's like a
that is
lot
a
in that
big
question.
question. Yeah. Wow, that's hard to cover because music, it's, I don't know, in a lot of ways it's like a drug, right? That people use it to self-regulate or like create certain emotions within themselves. So you have this whole like catalog of feelings basically that you can choose from. And I think through that it can be, healing or give you more energy or yeah, it's such a big outlet for emotions, I think. Largely for me, I would say mostly like healing.
Would you apply that to both listening and creating music, or is there different, would you apply different concepts to each of those?
Um, I think that that lines up in pretty much the same way because I know for me, like, I'm always trying to create out of emotion. Like if I'm creating from a space that's very blank, a lot of times it's hard to get something going. Um, but when you've got this like powerful emotion that needs to come out in some way, it seems like the words just come, the rhythm just comes somehow.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So there's definitely an aspect of it being an outlet for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to go back to something you said. I loved how you said that music is like a drug. And it's funny because when you first said that, I was like, oh yeah, because like sometimes I know this for myself. Like I can use it to numb myself. Do you think there is an aspect to that where it's using music to kind of numb your feelings as opposed to like tap into them?
Yeah, 100%. There of course is like the big positive side and the big negative side, and I'm super aware of that because I know that I've had mental health struggles in the past and I was listening to so much music that it felt healing, but it was like feeding into that struggle and like making me feel justified in that struggle. So with Blue Like Fire, I wanted to be really conscious of that and at least in the first songs that I put out, make it more of a bridge for those people that are in that place because it sounds pretty dark, but then when you dive deeper, the message is actually really good, really uplifting. Because I felt like when I was in this really dark place, I was like sitting in this hole, and the music I was listening to, it met me in this hole and it like sat with me in there and made me feel less alone. But I wanted to create music that will like meet you in that hole, but then also show you the ladder out of it, at least for the first projects that I've put out.
Yeah. No, that is fantastic. I can relate to that on a few levels. I mean, we do a lot of work with the meditation stuff that we do about changing yourself and changing your patterns and changing your environment. And it's something that I think about a lot is the music that I listen to. I'm like, is this helping me change, or is this rooting me in old patterns? And I think you make a really good point where there are some types of music that they sit with you and they reaffirm what you are, as opposed to giving you the way out of that hole. And that was the conscious effort on your part to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think this ties in really nicely. Like going into, it was when you were talking about one of the songs, and you said something along the lines of like rock bottom doesn't actually sneak up on you. It's there all the time. You just aren't paying attention to it until it gets loud enough. And that really resonated with me. Um, yeah, I'm just like, take me through kind of how that how that idea came to you.
At least in my experience, like there's always this awareness that you're unhappy or you're not fulfilling your potential or whatever the thing is. And it's easier to run from it until that voice gets so unbearably loud in your head that you finally have to face it. And that's what I would refer to as hitting rock bottom. It's like things are so bad that I'm finally uncomfortable enough to make the uncomfortable change. Like that seems more comfortable to me than the alternative now. Um, and for me, what brought me to that place was I developed generalized anxiety disorder in high school, and it just kind of like built and built and built, and I really wasn't aware of it until I started having panic attacks. Um, that would happen after I fell asleep.
Oh,
So my body would wake me up with tremors and nausea and all of that. So it was very much not a conscious thing. It was like all this unconscious stress. And that made me so uncomfortable that I finally looked around at my life and took inventory of how I was the architect of my own misery and the things that I needed to do to change. And that, yeah, and I finally took that step and was able to become a completely different person.
wow. That is super powerful. Yeah, and it's like the anxiety was something that you could deal with, but it was kind of like a smaller signal. I wonder if you were just like, yeah, I can deal with this. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but I can deal with this. And then it just kept getting louder and louder until it smacked you in the face and was like, whoa, I need to to change this. There's definitely something to that kind of always being there and it getting louder. And it kind of reminds me, talking about the unconscious part of it, is reminds me of like the body keeping the score. You have these minor insults and they keep building over and over again. And then I think your example is so good of this because it was literally happening when you were asleep. Like there's no trigger. Your body was just like, I need to deal with this stuff. And it was like, I need to show you so clearly that there's no trigger that I'm going to pop up while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is,
it's crazy like that the body can do that if you just like push stuff down and push it down.
yeah. And we're really good at that as
Yeah.
humans. Hey, scary good at that.
Mm-hmm.
So, were you making music at that point, or was this something that kind of came after?
I was not making music at that point. I was still very like entrenched in that anxiety and just fear of so many things. And like making music was one of them. It was something I really, really wanted to do. But I was just too scared because I thought like that I wasn't going to be good enough, which is ridiculous to think back on, right? Because it's like
Hmm.
if you want to do it, who cares if you aren't good enough? Just keep going until you are.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because it's like anytime you start anything, and I'm sure like you know this, like the first time you sang or the first time you played guitar, you were terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but it's like you're 5 years old. You don't remember being terrible. It's like it's funny. It's like we remember the you like remember the struggle when it's affirming some sort of belief, and then we forget that we were once bad at something when it doesn't affirm that belief. Um, so there's another part about one of the videos you were explaining, and it's about so this was it was the end of the first video where you've got like the black stuff on your and you're in the gown, and then the guy takes you into the other room. And
Hmm.
when you were explaining about that, you were um saying how in the moment when you looked at him when after he did the stuff to you, you realized who he was, but you made a conscious decision not to kind of show the audience who you knew he was. And you, like that moment of you surrendering to this guy who like you know who he is, but me as the audience, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like why are you letting him take you? What was like the thought behind that? Like why did you decide to introduce that in that way?
For the first six songs that I release, it takes you through the storyline of a transformation, and each of these new components of the transformation has some deeper meaning behind it. And the meaning is very well, it is how I overcame depression, overcame an anxiety disorder, like overcame so many of these negative mental habits that I had. And the process of that at first, it's really, for me, was very messy and very painful. And I wanted to not shy away from that in these videos when I'm representing that. So in that moment, I knew, like I could see that this other entity that was putting me through all of these challenges was really there to help me. And so I surrendered, but I didn't want the audience to see that yet because I wanted them to really feel the struggle um, throughout the entire process, which was the reality of how that process was for me the first time. I felt that was the best way to convey that message.
The way it looked on the outside was the way it felt going through, where it's like, no, no, no,
Hmm.
don't take her. The first time you were going through it, it felt scary and unknown, and like it, like you said, it was messy. But
Yeah.
looking back, it's the realization of though these things, they were my friends and they were helping me, but I just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. It's like you can consciously know that something is good for you, but that doesn't make it feel good. Um, so that is what I was trying to get across. Like I knew that these things were good for me consciously, but there was still so much resistance there because it was so unknown, so scary.
In what we do, in the work we do now, no, we talk about the unknown so much, and it's always really interesting when talking to people who I met through the meditation, kind of reminiscing on like how we were beforehand. And there's the theme is we were all just terrified of the unknown in just different iterations of that. And now we revel in it. And I think it's so cool to one have met you in that arena because we're there exploring the unknown together. And then getting to go back and see your videos and your music and how you portrayed it. It's like now I'm like, oh yeah, the unknown, that's cool, that's awesome. But the first time I was going through my shit, I was terrified too. I did not have a good time in the unknown. And having like you explaining that like makes it make a lot more sense to me because like it's easier to see things through the current lens of like how I see the world now as opposed to like what it was like going through it. And so that's fantastic. From that same video, you like kind of that same sort of sequence, you talked about like surrendering. And what the first surrender was you allowing him to take you, and then the second one is in the cage with the water where you're getting drowned by your anxiety and depression and the things that you were dealing with and rendering and facing them. Do you remember a moment in your life where you're like, I feel like I'm in the water tank, or I have to give up control over what I'm trying to control to allow this thing to heal?
Yeah. I honestly, I think it wasn't so much allow this thing to heal in the moment. In the moment, it was more like, this is all I can do. I can't do anything about it. Um, and what that video is trying to like visually represent is that moment. And it was when I was having these panic attacks that I could not control. I was not feeding into it with my own thought process. I was just sitting in that super uncomfortable, overwhelming feeling, and my mind was blank, just like terrifyingly blank. And it was just these crazy uncomfortable feeling. The nausea, I was super cold, I couldn't get warm. The first panic attack I had, I actually had a seizure. Yeah, which is crazy, like that the mind is that powerful. But like through all those panic attacks was where I had to learn that all I could do was surrender and just allow that to be. And through that, I was kind of able to transmute that and start to rewire.
So recently, I've been really thinking about the integration process, like when you have a breakthrough and when you have this exposure to new information that your mind is actually able to take in, and the process of you have that breakthrough and then being able to integrate it into your life and into your body and into your spirit and all of that. Were there things that you did kind of in the beginning of that transmutation process that really helped you kind of take this new way of being and like really ingrain it more?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily approach things in the same way now, just because I feel like I have a better understanding of these practices. But at the time, I got super into Dr. Joe Dispenza and super into meditating, and he talks so much about rewiring your brain. And like and because of that, I realized that I couldn't let those patterns continue throughout my day. So my transformation really started when I got really stubborn and not letting myself revert back to feeling the anxiety or thinking in certain ways, just flipping everything into something that was more positive and it served me.
Yeah. And did you do any writing? Did you do any walking, or was it really just you sitting down in meditation and having all this shit come up and just dealing with
Yeah,
it?
that's what it was. It was just sitting in the fire.
Mm-hmm. The blue
Yeah.
fire.
Yes.
As your meditation practice has changed, has your vision of blue like fire changed?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have all these components of the alter ego that I call the four torches that are like guiding lights in my life. And I think all of those will stay very much the same because they're broad concepts, but my mentality as a whole has changed to be less structured and less serious. I'm trying to have as much fun with things as possible and like using Blue, the alter ego, to push myself out of my comfort zone and take things not seriously at all. Just have as much fun, be as goofy as I possibly can. So that was like the biggest change for me.
Mm, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, playing around with all this stuff it's the best part. It's what makes it
Absolutely.
all worth it. It's like if you're not gonna have fun with it, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
life just gets boring.
yeah, and like I like what you said about like being less like structured and just kind of just allowing to create more, or to, because that's like more of a feminine energy, like just creating out of nothing. Was there like a
Yeah.
conscious intention to embody that, or you just kind of like, oh, this feels right?
Um, yeah, there has been a conscious intention because I am a super type A person and I tend to strangle the life out of my ideas and try to force certain outcomes, and nothing ever really turns out very good when I'm in that type of headspace and trying to force things. I've noticed that if I can take a step back and allow things to kind of take shape on their own, then they do. And oddly enough, it's just at the right time, at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And
Surrender.
I look back, yeah, yeah. And I realized if I would have surrendered, that would have saved me so much stress along the way of that whole process.
It is funny how it comes up in different. You almost have to learn the same lesson in different iterations
Yeah,
because it's like when you're having the panic attacks, it's more serious what is impacting your health and your quality of life. And so it's like learning surrender in there. And then when things are good and you're trying to create and make music, it's like the same thing, like letting go and surrendering, but just in a different way.
yeah, absolutely.
So with your four torches, that is that right?
Yes,
Four
yeah,
torches.
yeah.
Um, did you create like designs for them, or is it more of just the like a concept? Or obviously, I know you have like four things or ideas.
Yeah.
Did you draw them out? Did you make a sort of physical manifestation of them?
Yes, yeah. So, the four torches are shown in like each of the music videos and that storyline that make up the creation of this alter ego. So it's like every single component of the physical manifestation of the alter ego is one of the four torches. So, like, the first one is these black, burnt out eyes, and that represents becoming aware of blinding mental distortions. And the next one is the hair, which like changed color, became blue, and all these crazy colors.
Mm-hmm.
And that represents facing fear, leaning into fear. Um, and then the next one is just the outfit. It's just all black clothes, and that is representative of self-regulation, not reaching to external things to like give you confidence or happiness or whatever. And then the last one is just a really simple silver bracelet, and that's the balance to the first three. And it just represents love and good intentions because um the prior three, if you just focus on those so much, like it can get out of control, you can get reckless, you can get selfish, yeah, just like me, and I'm gonna bulldoze through everybody else to get what I want type of thing. So
Yeah, that's I the one that really stuck out to me as you were saying was the black eyes for seeing through blinding mental distortions.
big mood.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So why black?
um so I wanted to do like burnt out eyes because it's bringing awareness to your blinding mental distortions. Like it's becoming aware of how blind you actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're
Mm-hmm.
all seeing the world through like different colored lenses because we have all these perceptions in our heads. And I think it's kind of unreasonable to think that you'll be able to get rid of all of those. So it's just kind of keeping in mind if I'm thinking something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. And it probably isn't.
Yeah.
So it's like checking yourself.
Because no matter how much work you do on yourself, you're always going to have mental distortions.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like it just keeps coming back to surrendering to that and allowing it to be and not having the false sense of, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to be 100% spiritually enlightened. I have to be connected to source all the time. One of the things that's been coming to me lately is if we completely and 100% connected to source, we would have to die in that moment because
Yeah,
there'd be nothing else to do here. Like we're all
right.
here in these iterations of ourselves to heal and to grow and to have distortions and to experience them. Like it's such a valuable part of all of it. And so I love that. Just like it's really like accepting that and using it as something that's a strength more than like that detracts from you as a human.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a great way to explain it.
So you are also just like me. You're very into health. That's one of the things that we connected on when we met is that I've been in this world of learning more about how the body works and what we can do to support it for it's been like 5 years now. Have there been things that you've implemented that you've seen like really interesting outcomes from?
Oh my gosh. Like what do you like really want to hear about here? 'Cause
I don't care. That
you don't care. Oh
I have
God.
no vested interest. It's more of a curiosity thing. Like, is there something like that you've tried that you've been like, wow, that was surprisingly awesome?
Um, yeah, I feel like this is gonna be a little bit weird, but I immediately think of probiotics as well.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like game changing for me because I used to be like super tired throughout the day, and like every time after I would eat, I would just like crash. And so I was like had this like energy crash like 3 times a day until I started taking probiotics, and it's like that was that easy? Like getting rid of that was that easy? Are you serious?
Wow. That is the first time I've ever had someone give me that benefit from probiotics. I've heard
Really?
of people, there's so many times people say like, oh, like it improved my digestion, it improved my sleep is one that I hear somewhat consistently, but I've never heard
Huh.
just like energy. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm gonna completely switch gears because it reminded me of something that I was thinking about. So the music is a very creative process. Are there any other
Hmm.
things that you like to do to be creative?
Yeah. I was like a big art nerd in high school. Like I did all the AP classes, like AP art classes. And I don't do art super often unless it's for like music, but I think like designing the album covers and like thumbnails and stuff like that, like that was super fun for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all that stuff.
hmm I was just talking about how like the fifth center in expressing truth and authenticity, like you use your arms a lot to do that. And I like the idea of like music where it's very arm involved and same with art is like it's a very high expression of that fifth center. And I think it's like there's a reason why a lot of people who are good at music also kind of venture into the arts. Like they're very aligned.
Yeah.
And now I'm curious, when doing meditations, like doing the energy center, do you feel like you connect to five really well?
um I have to like go through in my head all of the to remember which one is that. That's
Throat.
throat. Oddly enough, I don't.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I do connect, but it's not the most intense for me. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
say most intense would be like heart center.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I would say I can connect to that one easier than others for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say the evidence is from your music and your art and everything. The evidence is that you connect pretty well to it.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder, what do you think about this idea? I wonder if the more you express a center in your life in the physical world, maybe you don't need to feel that intense connection to it during your meditations because you're already connected to it.
Yeah. That's a really interesting concept, actually. I've never thought of it that way, but like that would make a lot of sense.
You've sort of done like monologue-y types of things before. Um,
Yeah.
and what was like, I guess a lot of it for you was just documenting what you were doing.
Hmm.
Um, did you enjoy that process of like talking about everything
Or was
after?
that
Was that
uncomfortable?
uncomfortable for you? How did that feel?
Yeah, at first it was like really uncomfortable, but it did progressively get less uncomfortable. Although I wouldn't say that I had a lot of fun with that process. Like, I think I
Mm,
had a lot of fun making the songs, but the way that that the idea for everything came to me and the way that I create in general, it's very much like channeling. I get a download about like this is the way you're supposed to do something. And a lot of the time, like with the process of making all those music videos and stuff, I was like, oh no, really? Like that's gonna be really hard. Like when I thought about the idea popped into my head for making that big tank of water in the shark cage
mm-hmm.
music video, I was like, I have no idea how I'm gonna make that happen. Eh, I was like, do I really have to do this? And then it was like nothing else was coming. I was like, crap, all
Mm-hmm.
right, I have to.
That is so interesting. So when, like, did that come to you during a meditation, or was it like just sort of during the creative process of like making that all happen?
A lot of people talk about how really good ideas come to them when they're in like a state.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I kept this ability so strong, but as a little kid, I would be just spacing out and totally in that space and in my head and coming up with all these crazy ideas. And I'm still really, really good at doing that. So I'll some just random times like be sitting there and just completely disconnect from reality, but my eyes are open. Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I meditating? Not really, but I'm like not here. I like go
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere to that thought realm and then can kind of like pull these ideas back with me.
Mm-hmm. You must be how do you do with the walking meditate? Do you enjoy the walking meditation? Because that's like another time when you just kind of drop in with your eyes open and you allow, just like allowing things to happen.
Yeah.
I feel like at this point we should talk about like our experience
Okay.
at Cancun, the retreat that we went to. One, because that's where we met, and two, because it was our first retreat, and I think for both of us it was like pretty mind blowing.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yes.
just
That's an
like
understatement.
yeah, it's like you go and you get there, and I was like, oh yeah, like we're gonna meditate, we're gonna sit quietly, and we're gonna like not do anything, and you get there, and like they're blasting music, and like everybody's up dancing, and you're kind of like, what exactly am I getting myself into here? I don't know if that's the like that was your initial thoughts with it too.
I mean, kind of, yeah. Like, I'm remembering when I got there, I did not have like any intentions to like meet people or like really anything like that. I was just so interested in like the spontaneous remissions, and I was like, I want to see if somebody stands up out of a wheelchair this week. And we did see that, which
We
was really
did.
cool a
We
couple
did.
times.
Yeah, I think there were like
Yeah.
5 people that
Yeah.
week. I do
It was a
remember there
lot.
was the guy the one guy who had Parkinson's who was like sprinting down the corridor by the end of the week, and I was like, that was one of those moments where I was like, what the fuck is happening
Yeah.
here? People are just creating this out of their minds.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like it just took like what I thought reality was, and it was like you're wronger than you thought you even thought you could possibly be. I don't know if you had to
Absolutely.
say it similar.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Did you have any really profound experiences like during any of the meditations?
I know people get like a lot of visuals and super profound type of stuff. I was not on that level, but I definitely had like a very visceral experience would be the word of like releasing some energetic thing that I was holding on to, which is really interesting because it's like a problem that I was going to therapy for, and then like
Mm,
coming back home after that saying to my therapist like it's gone, like I don't know what happened, but I just don't have this problem anymore.
wow.
Yeah, so that was
Spontaneous
pretty amazing.
remission.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you were one of them.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I, you know, for me, like just the friends that we made that week, and you know, it's crazy. We talk every week. We have like mini little podcasts already with us and two more friends, and I could not be more grateful for meeting you guys. And I had no idea. Not to say that I didn't like went in with the intention of like not meeting people, but I was like, oh yeah, there will be people here, and like, you know, and whatever. And coming back with like three friends and more, that it's like, oh, like these are lifetime friends. It's just like I got a little more than I bargained for, which I'm not complaining about.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so after the retreat, like getting back home and getting back into normal life and whatnot, what was that like for you?
That was like post retreat time was like the best I've ever felt in my life. The only way I know how to say this is the religious reference, but I've heard, like the peace that passes understanding. It's like this level of peace that was like felt so unshakable until it
Mm,
was shakeable again, and I totally reverted back. But getting that glimpse that I could be in that level of peace in life was just like mind blowing.
yeah. And you created it. No one else did it for
Hmm.
you. Like I think that's
Yeah.
one of the most valuable parts about all of what we do in the meditations. If you feel really good after a meditation, you know you're like, I fucking did that.
Yeah.
And it's like there's you can't take that away. And
Yeah.
so when you did fall back into kind of the old patterns, was like what was that experience like? Like how did that feel after the kind of that peace that you were feeling?
I was doing so good not reacting to like situations that were coming up. I was like, whatever, it's not worth it. But then there was something that happened that it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like, so anxious, like all these negative feelings just boom. Which ultimately I think just makes me even more prepared to know how to deal with those situations when they come up in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's always going to be something. And I think like going through that experience just instilled in me even more so like it's not worth it. You don't need to go to this place emotionally. Everything's going to be fine.
Totally. Yeah, and it's practice. You
Yeah,
know, it's like
absolutely.
I there's this thing about like life being it's like life is a test, life is hard. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. But like you're sort of just practicing. One of the things that I always look for in my life and in the people's lives who are like around me is like how do patterns show up? Like do they show up again and again and again? Are you put in the same situation but with a different name over and over again, or am I put in the same situation with with a different name over and over again? And the answer is
Yeah.
always yes. Each time, and it's funny because each time it does feel really different. I'm like, well, this isn't the same because blah blah blah, or like this X happened this way and it didn't the other time. But I'm like, if I get really honest with myself, it's the same shit. Just like reframing it for me and being like, oh, this is just practice for the next time it comes up, because inevitably, until I figure it out, it's gonna come up again. And I think it makes me feel better about maybe not handling it in the exact way that I wanted to. But then we get a chance every day to fix that when we meditate, which I think is so cool because it's practicing being who you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's been one of the most valuable things. But you describe yourself as a type A person.
Yes.
How does that work with your meditations? Do you find yourself very like your brain is always going, or was it kind of like the thing where it's like, if I'm gonna meditate, like I'm gonna fucking meditate, and like I'm gonna be super type A about the the container of this meditation practice?
Yeah, I would say it oscillates between those
Hmm.
two things, which is not a great mix, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's funny. Because I'm like, I could see it happening both ways.
Yeah.
And for people who maybe don't meditate much, and especially people who are trying to create, who are sort of struggling with it, um, do you have any like tips or advice that you would give?
Yeah, I hear so many people say like I can't meditate, I'm not good at meditating, but like, you know, all of the experts, right? And I'm not an expert, so I'm just gonna
You are an
quote them.
expert.
No, not, not like Joe, not like, yeah, like I know enough, but yeah, like the people that really, really know, they're gonna tell you, um, that's okay if those thoughts are coming up. Like there's no such thing as a bad meditation. And each new thought that pops up for you is another chance to bring yourself back to now. And that's all it is a practice. It's like, whoop, like reset, bringing myself back. Yeah. I think that would be the biggest thing that I would say
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to a beginner.
totally. Yeah, because it is a practice. And what about
Yeah.
for sort of taking that creative energy and creativity and giving it form in the 3D world? What do you have any advice for people trying to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say don't try to force anything into a box that it doesn't want to be forced into. Because in my experience, I just haven't gotten very good results with that. Like if I'm trying to write a song a certain way because that's how certain people do it and their music is like widely loved and accepted by people. Like if I'm trying to mimic somebody else, it never ends up being as good as when I just let it like flow. So I would say that and just continue to develop while allowing that process because you could be letting it flow and it might not turn out good at first like but yeah, but eventually I think that is the best way to be when you're creating.
In flow. Yeah, you could not be good
Mm-hmm.
at flow. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There have been there have been a few instances during this episode that I have not been very good at flowing.
Same.
And that's okay. And it's fun because
Yeah.
it's like, it has been really cool. Like we've been doing this for an hour now, which is awesome. And just like hitting the little hiccups and then kind of like, oh, we'll get back into flowing nicely. And then it'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
nope. And then we'll get it back. And then it's like, it, these things, I feel like it's like, oh, we're just having a conversation, but like it is different. Like there is an
Mm-hmm.
element of like practicing how to, from me interviewing and you being interviewed, it's like we talk as friends all the time, but it is different and it is a little weird.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
um but there is something so cool about just like exploring that
hmm
and kind of again just like allowing it to flow. Have you had any mystical experiences yet?
I have just kind of started to have them.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just, like getting the visuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is just kind of started me. Like I've only had two and they've been really, really brief.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, has there been anything that's come in terms of like your music from those?
Um, it's hard to say. I want to say no, but it's also hard to say no because
Yeah.
it's like everything is so interconnected that
Yes.
I'm sure there's some influence there, but it's not conscious for me at least.
Fair enough. That
Yeah.
makes sense. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. If there was one artist that you could sit down and collaborate with, who would it be?
Oh, 100% 21 Pilots.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyways,
Yeah.
just
I'm a
because.
die-hard fan.
Okay, well, is there another one that is maybe completely different in a different, arena from them? Like, give me your unexpected one.
Russ, for sure.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah, I admire him so much as a person, and I think that
hmm
he like is just so wise. So like learning from him in any sense like would be just like amazing.
that is so cool. Is there anything that you're working on? Anything you want to plug? Anything? Yeah, what's coming up for you?
What's coming up? I am just trying to like build as big of a net of producers as possible because I have so many songs just in the bank right now that need to get produced. And then once I can do that, it's gonna be just a lot of music and a lot more content coming out. Probably some pretty goofy stuff. I know my song Shark Cage just hit 1,000 streams, which I know is not a lot,
Awesome.
but like for me that's a lot. So like I've
That
did
is a
some
lot.
pretty ridiculous goofy things in celebration of that, which will be coming
Fantastic.
out at some point.
Hell yeah. Well, imagine 1,000 people in a room. That's kind of a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. Like
Yeah, that's
awesome.
fantastic. Um, and I'm definitely patiently awaiting the shitload of songs that you have to come out. I'm very, very excited. And
Is
and
in
yeah,
collaborations with you at some
collaboration.
point.
Hopefully, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. So thank you again for coming on, being the first guest. Very special.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm sure I'll have
So honored.
I'm sure I'll have you on again.
Always
And
down. Always.
yeah, fantastic. All right. So I will see you guys next time on Creating Genius. And thank you again, Abri, for hopping on.
Thank you.